What's up, Roy Star?
Sitting across from me is the Reverend Dr. Mark Kelly Tyler. My brother, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I mean, yesterday was my voice, today is my ears. So, I can't, I mean, I hear everything else fine except you, but we will struggle through. So, you know how to use SOS?
Yes.
You know SOS signs?
Uh,
No.
Signal
Man,
for
you're like throwing up your iota signs now, man. What are you doing? I don't know those.
any more than I know the alpha sign. So, you know.
Right? It's like, what was that? Also, like 10 iotas are gonna run out of nowhere, man. Like, so, yeah, so it's all good though. Glad to see folk starting to come in now. What's up, Franny, and others? So I don't have my glasses. I hope I can get them during the break.
Yeah.
So right now I'm just gonna have to like I can't make this like screen any bigger.
So I'm,
What?
yeah. So I dropped my mixer yesterday. So I'm
Yeah,
wondering if that's part of what I'm struggling with here. Uh, so we'll figure this out.
you
See what
dropped your mixer.
Yes, I dropped the mixer. Not so not the mixer that you mix like cakes in, the mixer that I use for the sound system.
Yeah, well, whatever you just did made it a little bit better.
I put the gain up. That's what I did. I bumped the gain up, so
All
it
right,
sounds better. Okay, cool.
and all preachers know about that gain.
There you go.
You're
There
looking
you
at
go.
nothing worse than like in the middle of a sermon and the sound is like fading. You're looking at the sound person up on the booth. It's like, give me some, hey, give me some gain. And they're looking at you like, they always will tell you, you're fine. But to the preacher's like, no, I need more volume. No, bro, the last thing you need is more volume. That's the eternal battle of the sound booth and the pulpit. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, so listen, first of all, happy Veterans Day
Yes.
to all the veterans who are
Shout out to
out
my
there.
dad.
Yeah, your dad was a vet.
Yeah, he was in Vietnam. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. My father was in the Air Force.
Okay.
Father-in-law was in the Army, and
Okay.
in fact, Leslie was born. Little strange fact. Due to my father-in-law's service in the military, he was stationed at Nuremberg, Germany.
Oh wow.
So Leslie's really German.
Really?
She was born on an American base in Germany, so she's an American citizen, but on a
Did you
German base.
did you marry a European? Okay,
In
that's
fact,
cool.
yeah. But
We'll
one
get
day
into
I
that
tell
later.
us, yeah, one day I tell a story. We went to Nuremberg. We were
Hmm.
like at a conference somewhere else. We drove to Nuremberg. The hospital's been torn down, but it was like kind of cool. So yeah, but anyway, as we kind of look at the day, I was thinking about Veterans Day, and our generation, you and I. What's interesting to me is that very few of our friends are veterans.
Yeah.
And it's we were born during that period of time where we were like children during the end of the Vietnam War. So
Right.
we were too
Absolutely.
young to serve in that. And by that time, the draft had ended, and by the time the next quote unquote big war came around after 9/11, we were too old. We were like deep into our like late, mid to late 30s,
Hmm.
and so it's kind of strange when you talk to folk in our cohort because very few of them are veterans, and if they were, they typically served in peacetime, and so it's almost like kind of that missing piece for a lot of folk, in that generation. So for those of you in particular who served and had to go fight in places like Vietnam or Iraq or Afghanistan and have to live with that, shout out to you on today and lifting you all up.
So, little known fact, I was actually in the Air Force Junior ROTC when I was in high school at Lincoln High School up in the Northeast. I graduated high school as a cadet captain, and I actually enrolled in ROTC when I was at Boston College. My first year, they had an Air Force ROTC at Boston University. Ran into a problem though. I didn't have a car, and PT was every Thursday morning at 5:30 a.m. And the T didn't start running until 5:30 a.m. So I was going to be late every day going to PT. So I wound up dropping the program because I didn't have a way to get down there to go to PT. So just a little known fact, I actually wanted to be in the Air Force. I wanted to be an Air Force physician. That was my goal coming out of one of my goals coming out of high school.
That's funny. I wanted to be Air Force pilot.
Did you really?
I sure
You
did. We could.
you have the personality for that. You totally have the
I
personality.
wanted to fly fighter jets. Go figure.
I know it actually makes a lot of sense. It just
Does,
really makes a
does it
lot of
really?
sense. It does. It absolutely makes a lot of sense. I
Well,
mean,
and to this day, I love fast motorcycles, and so maybe that's where that adrenaline rush comes
you
from, or
saw
whatever.
Top Gun. That's what the problem was.
No, it's predated Top Gun. I grew up like
Yeah.
building like model airplanes and all of
Okay, I
that.
did that
Yeah,
too. Yeah, that was cool. Yeah.
yeah. So listen, today, uh, also as we kind of look at the national scene, we're going to talk some very local news that again has, I think, some national implications around police oversight. Kiera Bradford Gray, our chief public defender, will be in today. She
Mhm.
was called out on yesterday, and she's coming in to defend herself, and no one can do that like Kiera Bradford Gray. You don't want to miss that
I don't
conversation.
know why anybody would do that. I mean, Maurice, I'm sorry, bro. I don't know why you. That was not a good move.
Maurice likes starting trouble. That's why. That's our guy. That's our guy. And so yeah, so she's going to come in and address the Michael White case.
Yeah.
And there's a documentary being made. But, she and her team have been right there with us side by side as partners in the town halls that Power Live Free put on those 8 town halls. Could not have done it in the way that we did without her and her police accountability unit. So she's going to talk as well about her thoughts around what police oversight should look like. And so, that being said, can we at least talk about for a moment the fact that I know we're going to talk about the president, but we're also witnessing a resurgence of COVID cases.
It's vicious.
I mean,
We've hit new highs.
yeah,
We have the most hospitalizations ever right now for COVID-19, and the numbers are staggering in terms of their going up. I mean, every state now has numbers going in the wrong direction, going up. So yeah, we got some real challenges ahead of us with this.
and I continue to say it's interesting that they really, well, first of all, they come from places where Trump did very well,
Hmm.
right? And so, and you look at places like North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin. A lot of the places that like supported Sturgis, the big
Right.
rally. I was like, man, are you crazy? Ain't no way I'm going to Sturgis this year. And 400,000 people on motorcycles who are all openly defined wearing masks. And so just as, the prophet Anthony Fauci predicted, we have a fall resurgence, and it's, being aided by the fact that, again, in this country, it's almost like the number of people who voted for Trump are also the number of people who refuse to wear masks.
Hmm.
Something that is very simple. And so these numbers are continuing to rise. So Philadelphia Public Schools had to scuttle their plan to
Yeah.
reopen schools, and they were kind of going to do a hybrid version. So they just abandoned that, and they'll revisit it in the spring. There are hopeful signs about a vaccine, and then also some therapeutics that can help you once you get it. But I mean, listen, we're still like a very long way away from you being able to go to CVS and say, you know what, give me a couple of COVID vaccines.
Right. We're a long way from that.
So there's only really one way to address it right now, and it's behavioral. And that means then changing how we actually live in this moment to save others and to save ourselves. Can you explain to me why this is so difficult, and why, as Denise would say, my good friend Denise Clay, why this is the hill people choose to die on? Because I don't get it.
Because I think people don't care. So I mean, here's a couple of things about this. I mean, things that why this is really important for us to pick this up. One, Pfizer's already said that in the first year they'll only be able to do 50 million vaccines, and this is a 2-step vaccine, right? So that's only 25 million people. It's going to go to first responders, nurses, doctors, EMTs, police officers, firefighters, folk like that are actually out on the front line. Maybe some other essential workers will get it, right? So there's 330 million people in the United States. So for us to be able to have full vaccination, we need 660 million vaccines. They're only going to have 50 million in the first year. So there's still going to be a lot of people that are doing that. I think that there is this notion, well, young people have this notion like they're immortal, right? They're going to live forever. This is not going to impact them. So that's part of it. And then there are the Trumpers who are just like, nothing's going to happen to me because I am white man and I am immune. to everything, right? Because I follow Donald Trump because he is the ultimate cult leader in the world right now. Um, and I also think that there are just some people that are just like, I don't feel like being bothered. If I die, I die. And that is part of what we're contending with at the same time. And it's also just a blatant disregard for your neighbor, right? Because part of the reason we wear the mask is not that the mask is going to prevent us from, breathing in the fumes, but it's to prevent us, if we have it, from breathing on other people and sharing it with them. So it's also just a blatant disregard for neighbor, right? We could go back to our faith tradition and say, the Bible says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, all your heart, your mind, your body, your soul, and then love your neighbor as yourself. And I think that there's a blatant disregard with neighbor. And actually, I think Trump has stoked that. Everything goes back to Trump for me. Racism and Trump. There's just a blatant disregard for neighbor. And I think that that's part of what we're contending with. We don't care about our neighbors.
Well, I think you're right. And so right now, speaking of Trump, he is continuing to refuse to concede. It's funny because Republicans picked up 10 House seats.
Yeah.
And did very well in the Senate, better than expected. And if they just if they just get one seat out of Georgia, they can maintain control. And somehow that is not voter fraud, but the presidential election is voter fraud. So the same mail-in ballots that elected them are legitimate, but the mail-in ballots that elected Joe Biden are not legitimate. I mean, I think, the needle they're trying to thread here is one that you're straining, what it is to be credible. I think that the real problem that they're going to have, and we're going to see it in real time very shortly, is what happens in Georgia. Now, I happen to believe, my theory is that this is going to hurt them long term with their chances of retaining those 2 seats in Georgia. Because the more that they try to obstruct, for fear of losing Trump, which, I mean, I don't know why, but okay. In Georgia, this is just building up the pressure and the anger. And there is a place Democrats can focus their rage right now. And with finances, with boots on the ground, and people are pouring into Georgia. So I don't know. I think they believe this is going to help them in Georgia. I don't see how. I mean, do you see something different? Does this help them in Georgia at all?
Yeah, actually, so what a lot of people don't realize is that the GOP has called for the resignation of the Secretary of State of Georgia, who happens to be a Republican, because of the way the election went down, right? So I think that they are imagining that they're going to be able to get their base out to do that. Special elections, which is what it will be in January, tend not to do as well as big general elections do. So I think that everybody's betting on trying to move their base out and get them out to vote in the primary. I think, somebody told me predicted the other day this will be the most expensive Senate race in the country. Now, the most expensive Senate race to date is the Senate race that just occurred in North Carolina, but they are expecting that the Georgia Senate race will be more than that, and they'll probably be somewhere in the range of $200 to $300 million will be spent on that race. So I think that there's a lot of energy going into that, trying to take back the Senate. They have to win 2 seats. It's not just one. They got to win 2 seats, which is going to be a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got to think whoever, at this point, it's so close that you have to believe that whoever wins one is going to win them both. So either the Democrats claim them both or the Republicans claim them both. And, again, personally, I just think that this obstruction, it doesn't help the Republican Party not moving on. It's one thing to contest something that's legitimate, but, I mean, my God, dude, everybody else has already conceded. We all know this to be true. And for them they're going to then now drag it out until the Electoral College votes in mid-December. So you can't then flip the switch once you then concede, as Mitch McConnell and others, and now let's focus on Georgia these last 3 weeks of the race, while Democrats, I think, have built up a lead and some pressure. So, I mean, at this point, it's all about Georgia. That's it. I mean, there's no other thing that is really important. And where Trump could be helping the Republican Party, frankly, I'm glad he's not. Where he could is if he were to simply say, you know what, I concede, But look, we can't lose the Senate as well. And if he posted up in Georgia and did nothing else but stumped, it would be over for Raphael Warnock and Ossoff. They wouldn't have a chance. But him, playing the child right now, I think it advantages Democrats. And so, look, if you got friends and family in Georgia and you want those seats, I say get on the phone. We got to take a quick break, and we come back. Kier Bradford Gray, the chief public defender, is on the line, and we'll break some things down with her. This is the Power Hour.
What's up, Philly? It's Sincerely Sarita. The school year is underway, but never before has that experience come in so many shapes and sizes. Is the education of your child being left to a smattering of clumsy in-person and virtual instruction? The COVID-19 crisis has created a market for untested virtual teaching models lacking true credibility. Maybe it's time to reconsider and exercise your choice. Maybe it's time to check out Commonwealth Charter Academy. Here are the benefits to your family. 1, an online education provided at no cost to you, complete with laptop, headset, and help with internet access. 2, partnership with the market leader in cyber education with a nearly 20-year track record of world-class learning. And 3, delivery of a safe, reliable, and comfortable education experience over the internet directly to the confines of your living room. Visit ccaeducate.me today and discover the gold standard of cyber education. That's ccaeducate.me.
This Veterans Day vignette is brought to you by Rivers Casino Philadelphia.
In recognition of Veterans Day, WURD Radio celebrates the Tuskegee Airmen, the first black aviators in the United States military. The Tuskegee Airmen trained at the Tuskegee Army Airfield in Alabama while facing racial segregation, discrimination, and the denial of fair pay in the armed forces and at home. When dispatched, they flew more than 15,000 units during World War II and earned more than 150 distinguished flying crosses, shattering doubts about their capabilities as black aviators. Their demonstration of excellence contributed to the integration of the United States Armed Forces. As we continue to fight for racial justice today, WURD Radio celebrates the Tuskegee Airmen and other black Americans who have served and continue to serve our country.
This Veterans Day vignette was brought to you by Rivers Casino Philadelphia. Go to betrivers.com to play now. Tune in this and every Saturday at 3 p.m. for the Let's Talk Fire Safety Show with host Adam Thiel, Fire Commissioner, discussing fire and life safety. He's back.
This is Reverend Al Sharpton.
Keeping it real
With the Reverend Al Sharpton. In times like these, we have to stay connected.
at a brand new time. Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight.
I'm excited that Keeping It Real returns to WURD.
Keeping it real with the Reverend Al Sharpton. Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight. This program is pre-recorded. No phone calls, please.
Keep it locked to WURD 96.1 FM, 900 AM. WURDradio.com.
Now, a traffic update on WURD Radio.
Good morning. Not too bad as you make your way this morning. Looking at Volley Building southbound 95 from Cotman down through Bridge through that construction to get Allegheny through Girard northbound looks pretty good. Westbound Vine, no problems there yet. Heading toward the Schuylkill Expressway. Schuylkill westbound University through the South Street building through that work zone eastbound side. Not bad as of yet. Delays on the Blue Route 476 PA Turnpike really not there. Nice and light 42, 55, 295 so far so good this morning. For more traffic information, log on to sigalert.com. I'm Jim Bachman with your Philadelphia area traffic.
You're listening to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent black media.
Welcome back to the Power Hour with Mark Kelly Tyler and Dwayne David Royster. We are excited now. We have a special guest that's joining us today because we're responsive to our listeners. And we want to make sure that when they put out wrong information, sometimes we got to go back and correct it. So we're going to have, we have our Chief Public Defender, Kier Bradford Gray, on with us at this time. And I'm turning over to Dr. Tyler to walk us through.
Oh, listen, I mean, we've got an expert. We can just actually turn the show over to her and just go sit back. Kier, good morning. Welcome to the program. She's also she's a part of the listening family as well. And so she, I see her listen every morning. Good morning, Kier. How's everything going?
Good morning. I'm so glad you guys are back, man. This is awesome. I'm doing well.
You need a show, Kier.
Well, we'll see one day, right?
Yeah, I'd love to see like you and Michael Kort have a show. That would
Oh,
be
that would
like
be so
crazy.
fun. That would be fun.
So Kier, all right, first of all, let's talk about the Michael White case. You said that there's a documentary coming. So what's that all about? And what can you divulge about the documentary?
Well, one, thank you for having me to talk about this because I do think this is a critically important discussion. It really talks about the role that race, privilege, class plays in the justice system. And so there's a documentary coming out with respect to the Michael White case. It's called 72 Seconds in Rittenhouse Square because 72 seconds is exactly how much time it took for Michael to arrive on the scene and for everything that have happened in terms of, the tragic result of what happened to Sean Skellinger. But it's going to go in depth of what really happened in the case instead of just relying on the sensationalism of the media. And it's going to really show the role the media played in the perception of who Michael White was, what Michael White did or didn't do, and how he was charged and treated in this system, even with progressive prosecutors, over the helm. And I do appreciate this chance to talk about this because I really want most people who don't understand this system or don't really know how it operates to take away from this that there are two sides that really are needed to create justice. You can't just stick a person in the role of a prosecutor's seat, call them progressive, and believe that everything is fine and we don't have to do a lot more work to make sure that there are not biases or blind spots that we have when we see young boys of color, and Mike was a young boy of color, and what their culpability is or what their ability for or propensity for violence is, because that's real in our system, and that's what we fight against every day. That's what I fight against every day. And so this is a really good example of someone who, I will say this right off the bat, and I'll say it in the film, I didn't think needed to be charged because he was attacked in a very violent way. And when you see the documentary, it's being directed by T. Gray Hill, the one who did Shame of the City, and I think Barrel of a Gun. He really got an epiphany of what actually happened in that case, and he got the same bird's eye view that the jury did when we really, really went through in depth how this case happened and how, I will say this publicly, Michael White did not stab Sean Skellinger in the back. That's like probably a wow moment because that's been the narration throughout this whole trial. But you're going to see that there's a lot more evidence that Larry had and we all had that I brought to him at his disposal where I thought that decisions could have been made differently.
So first of all, you lifted it up. You called it a tragedy. So I know that the Shellinger family continues to be angry, and I get it. I would probably be the same way if it were my loved one, and I think we always want to believe that that we should be vindicated. So I just want to acknowledge their pain and their suffering, but that does not necessarily make Michael White guilty either. And so I'm glad that the court decided that. And so this is a tragedy on both sides. Michael will probably never be the same. But that being said, what you just lifted up, Kier, do you think that, so if Michael had been the assailant, right, with two of his friends in a car, and they jumped on a young white guy who was delivering food, and the same result happened, do you think charges would have been brought against Michael White if Michael White had been white and Sean Shellinger had been black and they had been football players at Penn State or whatever, like real big, burly kind of guys? Do you think there was almost like feeling like culturally there's an obligation to bring charges against Michael because he is black and the person who died was white?
100%, Mark. This is the things that we're talking about. How race plays a role in decisions that are made in this justice system. It is a huge factor. And I think most people are thinking that it's only, race plays no role. And even the GA, Anthony Bocci, was really upset that it brought race and class and privilege into this case because it needed to be brought into this case because it was at the forefront of how everyone perceived what happened and what Michael White did. If Michael White was a young white boy delivering chicken and just happened to roll upon a situation where a big black guy who had been drinking and who had been doing drugs attacked him And he was walking back saying, leave me alone. Stay back. Stop. And the person attacks him anyway. And what happens that ensues leads to Michael, who was the assailant, death based on an attack by Michael. We wouldn't even be talking about this at all. Do you know how many people and white men don't get charged when they stand their ground? Do you know how many people don't get charged? Police officers, when they say, I was in fear for my life, so I had to kill. Do you know how many people don't get charged when it's white and on black crime? I mean, it's pervasive. And if we don't wake up and understand how much that plays a role, we're always going to have a false sense of security in thinking that this progressive prosecutor is going to make all the right decisions in every moment. And no one can make all the right decisions every moment, especially when they may have their own blind spots about culpability and behavior. And that's what I fight against every day. I even wrote an op-ed about it recently because it is real, and it's something that we as black people don't need to accept all the time, that every time someone's brought into this system, it means that they need to be brought into this system for whatever behaviors that maybe another white person would not be brought into this system for. I would ask, Mark, if you take a look at my op-ed, I think we did, it really does go into what we label as crime based on the doer. And when you see the intricacies of this case through this documentary, you are going to walk away with a whole different understanding of what happened, and maybe a question of why was he charged?
Yeah, so we're talking to Chief Public Defender Kiera Bradford Gray. I'm actually going to post in the Facebook Live chat the link to the WHYY essay that she wrote about the topic we're talking about. Bishop, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking, like, how do we, Chief Public Defender, how do we stop this race-based charging of offenses here in the city of Philadelphia? And like you said, you can't expect that just because you slap the title progressive on a prosecutor, that's going to end. There are also people with a lot of discretion, even in that office, that do things that are not necessarily controlled directly by the district attorney. So how do we stop this, right? And I mean, part of this for me too is, so I kind of walked through the system a little bit with my brother. We got black folk that are charging black folk up, and not dealing with their own internalized oppression and implicit bias. So how are we addressing that in the system as well?
That's a great question. So I had to examine myself. I've been in this system for about 21 years. And even when I was a young public defender, I would accept the fact that young kids had to come into this system for similar things that I did when I was a kid. And I would work their case up instead of pushing back on the system and saying, this is not a crime. This should not be here. And so it does start with some of the system actors, but it also starts with the people who are the village of the person who's being brought in, to really lean on the decision makers and let them know this person is not this one scenario. This person is much more than that, and there's other opportunities to address this behavior versus labeling it a crime and bringing it through the system where there's a lifetime brand and a lot of trauma. And I do think that we need to stop using this system for every situation that we have. We have gotten so accustomed for black and brown people controlling our bodies through using the justice system. I use a reference in my op-ed about slavery. It's about the labeler. So when the slaves were running away from their, vile captors, they were labeled criminals. And it was labeled criminals so that bounty hunters could go snuff them out and bring them back to face charges. But the people who were actually doing the brutalization of the slaves were not criminals. It was fine. They could, rape, beat, do whatever they wanted to. But when people ran away from them, they were labeled as criminals. I think that this has evolved in the controlling of black bodies and how we need to deal with behaviors that are done at the hands of black people. And we use the system more often than we should, where we would not do that for white individuals. And I think we need to start there as a black community to understand when that difference is occurring. My office has been steadfast at bringing about where racial disparities exist, and we will share that data and information with anyone who is willing to understand it. And we need to come up with a way as a village, as a community, to address behaviors and give people an alternative to basically saying, I will take this young man. I don't need this system to take him. We will take him. We as a church, we as this organization, we as this nonprofit, we will deal with this because we believe that this child can grow out of these behaviors with the right direction versus being criminalized and thinking of themselves as stigmatized enough so that they're not a part of our society. That's a huge reform issue that I say in my op-ed, justice reform is impotent without a commitment to really dismantling the racist decisions that are made. And if we don't start there, we're never really going to get true justice from our system for black and brown communities.
Well, boy, I tell you, I'm thinking that last piece was just really loaded. Thanks for that question, too, that you just lifted up, Royster. I'm thinking about the ways in which, you're right, that we have, the way in which the system looks at society. So even black folk, we can get the honorary white pass sometimes. Immediately when you raise that question, I remember in my high school, I was at a private school, and but I hung out at Castlemont. That's where all my friends and everybody in my neighborhood went to school. We got in trouble, and the police were, let's just say the police were looking for some people. And they were right to pull me over. They had everything right, but I had graduated the year before, and I still had my O'Dowd ID. And I gave him my Bishop O'Dowd ID, and these were black cops. And you know what they said? They looked at each other and said, this can't be him. He goes to O'Dowd. And they let me go. Now, that is, you see what I'm saying? So it's like, because I've got this pass that says I'm associated with this private school, I could not have possibly been involved in what they were looking for, and the ways in which even as black people, we prejudge one another and get caught up in and looking at each other through the lens of white supremacy. It's just, I'm sorry, man. We're fortunate to have you, Kier, because, you look
Absolutely.
Beyond that.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, it wasn't easy because you get brainwashed and you start to buy into these racist ideas. And it's not until you really have to stop and think and say, wait a minute, because most people can't contextualize their own behaviors. And so when you bring people in this system and you're saying, wait a minute, I know 5 people that, were doing this the other day, and police just kind of said, hey, everybody go home. Why is this person brought into the system with the ramifications that this system has? And so I'm calling on system justice stakeholders to carefully consider who we bring into this system because the stakes are so high. It's not like you can come in this system and come back out and be fine and just, spring back into what you left off. This system takes a lot away from you that it can never give back. And when we talk about poverty and the connection to poverty, this system has a huge role in that.
Whoo, Kier Bradford Gray, she is our chief public defender, and I want you all to know this is her every day. She is always out there fighting for a lot of cases that I've seen personally where, even those of us who think we're woke would be willing to write it off, but she's like, no, take another look at this. And so we want to continue the conversation with you, Kier, on the other side of the break and talk about the new police oversight law that is about to go into effect. City Council will be shaping a new police oversight commission. And I have to imagine you have a couple of thoughts about that, Kier?
I do. One, first of all, I'll wait. You want to wait?
Yeah. I'm just trying to just tease folks so they don't disappear. I don't want them to disappear on the break. So when we come back, you're going to get an earful from Kier Bradford Gray about what this new commission ought to look like. You don't want to miss it. This is the Power Hour. We'll be right back.
Man, this coronavirus has us all moving differently.
No doubt. Like washing our hands more and social distancing with the crew. I'm always telling people to give me 6 feet. We're here, Grandmom.
There's my babies. Good to see you got your mask on.
Wear mask. Stop the spread. For more information, visit www.pa.gov/COVID.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
Listen to Laborers Live.
We created the weekend. We created the 40-hour work week. We just want enough to feed our family, be able to send our children to college, and let our next generation do better than we did.
The people that might have forgot how important unionism is in a country like the United States. People now infringing on our 8-hour workday, kind of work people more than 8 hours without overtime, kind of work people without benefits. In the long run, everybody's getting fat paycheck except they're working. So this is really a wake-up call for America.
The struggle is continuous. Tune in to Laborers Live every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. Sponsored by LESIT, the Laborers Employers Cooperation Education Trust of the Laborers District Council of Philadelphia and vicinity.
Local 332, Sam Staten Jr. Business Manager. Local 57, Esteban Vera Business Manager. Local 135, Dan Woodall Jr. Business Manager. Local 413, James Harper Jr. Business Manager. The Laborers District Council, Ryan Boyer Business Manager, and Tony Staten, Executive Director of LESIT.
This Veterans Day vignette is brought to you by PICO.
African American women in the military during World War II. In recognition of Veterans Day, WURD Radio celebrates the African American women who served in the military during World War II. In May of 1942, the Women's Army Corps accepted its first 39 African American women, often referred to as Black Rosie the Riveters. Black women who served in the military during World War II played a key role in war production. Overcoming Jim Crow, racial and gender discrimination, the African American women who served were revered by their families and were able to contribute to financial growth for their communities in ways that were unprecedented at that time. Their work often lives in the shadows, but many of the Black women who were in the military during World War II are our mothers, grandmothers, aunts who the United States could not have won World War II without. As we continue to fight for racial justice today, WURD Radio celebrates the African American women in the military during World War II and other Black Americans who have served and continue to serve this country.
This Veterans Day vignette was brought to you by PICO, powering communities. Now, a traffic update on WURD Radio.
Good morning. Not too bad as you make your way this morning. Looking at Volley Building southbound 95 from Cotman down through Bridge through that construction to get Allegheny through Girard northbound looks pretty good. Westbound Vine, no problems there yet. Heading toward the Schuylkill Expressway. Schuylkill westbound, University through South Street building through that work zone eastbound side. Not bad as of yet. Delays on the Blue Route 476 PA Turnpike really not there. Nice and light 4255 295 so far so good this morning. For more traffic information, log on to sigalert.com. I'm Jim Bachman with your Philadelphia area traffic.
You're listening to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent black media.
Welcome back to the Power Hour with Dwayne Royster and Mark Kelly Tyler. Hey, listeners, rep your support for Black Talk Media with a free WURD sweatshirt when you become a member now through November 16th. Just use the code SAVESPACE to receive your free sweatshirt with the purchase of your WURD membership. Go to wordradio.com/join now to join or renew your membership today. So continue to support Black Talk Media. It has deep implications like the conversation that we're having right now with the Chief Public Defender, Keira Bradford Gray. And Chief Public Defender, let me ask you this question. So this ballot measure to create the Police Oversight Board won with over 80% of Philadelphians saying we want this. You been a part of the Live Free Town Hall meetings. There were 8 town hall meetings. I think you were on just about every one of them, talking about what this police oversight board needs to look like. Would really love for you to share with our listeners. What do you think is absolutely critical for this oversight board to look like if it's going to have real implications and create systemic change here in the city of Philadelphia?
Well, first, I want to thank Power and Live Free for bringing forth so many different models that we could learn from in terms of what's going on in the country with police oversight. These things are really taking a life of its own in terms of the need for citizens to have a place to actually get their concerns and their complaints addressed. This oversight board has to have autonomy. The Police Advisory Commission that we have now is under the mayor, who appoints the police commissioner. And so there's a lot of restrictions with what they can do, can say, can speak out, or can be transparent about. The fact that we have this measure on the ballot means that we need to make it totally independent, but also, once it becomes independent, what types of authority and what types of teeth should it have? And one, it should have a budget that is really supportive of structuring that oversight commission in a way that allows them to do thorough investigations, that allows them to get people who have the background and understanding of how to use subpoenas and how to conduct investigations through a police perspective as well. But it more so has to have and be given number one authority to investigate particular situations. So if this oversight commission is the number one authority to investigate civilians against police complaints, then that means all information about that has to be turned over to the Oversight Commission. And if it's not turned over, there has to be sanctions and ramifications for the police department for not respecting the authority of the Oversight Commission. This is going to be a game changer in the way we kind of have checks and balances on police action in these communities. When we looked at this, and part of the data that we gave Power and Live Free, my police accountability unit, who's phenomenal in terms of really looking at police activity, they really saw that 85% of the civilian against police complaints were unanswered. And the ones that were answered and sustained, the only recommendation for most of those were for the police to get further training. And we're talking about allegations of physical abuse, allegations of some sort of sexual abuse, all of these things that people complain about and go ignored. And then ultimately we may have had a situation where one officer was finally caught with, the sexual abuse and sexual harassment he had been doing in the community after several years of being complained about, and that officer was a homicide detective. So there was now all of these homicide cases that had to be overturned because his behavior went unchecked. So these are really at stake here, the way that police our communities, the emboldenedness that they've had for a very long time to do whatever they want and never be held accountable. And finally, we're going to have an authoritative body that was responsive to the community when they are investigating complaints and bringing vital and transparent information about what's going on with the complaint.
Do you have thoughts about the composition of the commission and what it should look like? Who should be on it?
So I'm still learning those things from other models because everyone has different ways that they have done it. And quite frankly, I don't have a particular profile at this moment, but I do think I look forward to learning more by working with Power and Live Free about what works in terms of the composition, in terms of the profile and the background and experience of the person who may be leading that commission. Those are things that I'm still learning about, and so I want to make sure that I know more before I answer that.
Sure.
Well, so what kind of people then? I mean, just like, because I agree with you, I don't think that any of us are really sold 100%. But like, if you're thinking just of a type of person, what type of person should be on? It should actually be a part of police oversight in the city.
Well, I guess I'm biased in this way. I always think lawyers have a very unique understanding of how to use subpoenas and how to investigate because we do that by trade and practice. And so I would think and I would hope that they have someone with a background that knows police activity, knows police action, and can do the proper investigations because they've done it before. So I think someone with a legal background or an investigatory background will definitely be someone that's necessary in this role because that is going to be, we do this all the time in our office. So I do know how effective it can be when someone knows what to look for.
So Kier, so to that point, that is perfect. You're right. A lot of the people that we heard from who are doing oversight have either had law enforcement background or lawyers, and they seem to represent some of the strongest ones that we heard, from across the country in the town halls. Can you kind of talk about why, police are often how they often get their jobs back? Because it does go back to the investigators, right, and their inability to do good investigations. I mean, that kind of supports your argument. I mean, I know you have been frustrated by this, so I'd just love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, a lot of things first of all, Act 111 is a mandatory and binding arbitration that's already skewed towards police. However, what we've been finding is that the investigations and the information that these arbitrators get is very, very mediocre. It's not complete in terms of a record. Most of the time, the complainant themselves has not had an opportunity to fully address the body that's deciding whether or not the officer has committed any wrongdoing. You get a summary by a police officer of what the complaint is saying that may not really encompass all of the facts that need to be examined. And so we're seeing that these types of investigations that even go up to the arbitrators are very minimal. They're not complete. They're missing a lot of information. And so it's pretty easy for an arbitrator to say, well, I don't really see it that much here on the record, so I will reinstate your job with back pay. And so we need to make sure that these investigations are thorough, that they have all of the people that need to be involved, that they have reached out to people and asked the relevant questions, because some of the questions aren't even relevant to a defense. It's more so relevant to the police's version. And that's because the people doing it can't see beyond their own understanding of what should happen on the street, because they're officers and they're conducting an investigation as a police officer would, not as an independent person that wants to hear both sides, kind of like a jurist or a judge should do it. And so we need to make sure that these records are thorough. And so we want to push, too, because Act 111 can't be the only barrier, because Act 111 does require some transparency. So when thorough investigations go up for binding arbitration decisions, we need to be able to see those records and see what went up for the arbitrator to decide.
So what you're saying is, even with Act 111, if we had people who could do better investigations, train lawyers, persons who are skilled versus people, I won't even say versus people, just if we had people who are better skilled, that arbitration would not be as successful as it is right now, getting their jobs back, right?
I think if it is successful, now we'll have a new person to point the finger at, right? So meaning if we have all this information and you ignore it and give the police officer their job back, now we have a new questionable question for what's going on with you as an arbitrator, and why are you being selected as an arbitrator? And so I do think transparency starts to give you a way to look at where the problem really lies. So we will start to know if the problem is the investigation or the biased arbitrators themselves.
See, I'm very skeptical, but you know that. I'm like, yeah, I'm right. So my feeling is always that these investigators are putting poison pills in, because the cases get thrown out a lot of times, Royster, by like a technicality. It's like, you're actually a creep, and we believe you actually did do it. Oh, but this form had to be turned in by 5 p.m. on that day, and it was turned in at 5:01 p.m. Therefore, we have to throw the entire case out, and you get your job back and back pay.
Mm-hmm. That's a problem.
I think that, like I said, now, call me crazy and cynical for not trusting the system, Asa Khalif. I see you out there, Rochelle Bilal, but that's just me. Well, look here, we're at the end of the show. What are your hopes going forward as we, kind of look at this changing landscape? This is a movement that's happening, and you're kind of like the tip of the sword, so to speak, in your group of public defenders around the country. Where are we going? Are we going to actually really get to the promised land of real change?
I think it's going to take more than lawyers. I mean, I tell you, the lawyers and activists, when they work together, we really create some good things that come out of civil rights movements. But we have to stay vigilant, and we have to stay educated, because I believe that the education is so critical, especially in this area where it's been very non-transparent. And so where I'm looking at to get to the promised land is that decisions are made free of racial bias. Will that be achieved in my term or my administration or my lifetime? I don't know, but I'm not going to stop fighting for it. My mother always says, if your dreams and goals are going to be achieved in your lifetime, you're not dreaming big enough. Racism has been alive and kicking for so long, but I really do think with more open-mindedness, more will to call it out and to fight back against it from people like yourselves and Powerless Free, you and Bishop Royce, all of the people that want more and that want to learn more and that take the time out of their busy lives and busy schedules to break it down and learn and bring it to the public. That's what it's going to take for us to stop accepting these racist practices from this justice, and that has a history of being rooted in racism, and it's just evolving and getting better at masking it. And I'm serious about that. I can't be more heartfelt about that. And this is something that is my personal mission, whether I'm in this role or not, that I will continue to fight for.
That's Kiera Bradford Gray, your chief public defender. Hope and pray that you never have to meet her. But if you do need her, trust me, you've got a great public defender. Thanks, Kiera. Have a great day.
Thank you guys for everything. Talk to you soon.
All right.
Hey, Royce, I know we got to go, but I just want to tease this out. So we have an expert who's willing to come on to talk about defunding the police and what that means, help people kind of understand and get beyond the triggering word defund. Brian Mercer said he's willing to come on this week.
Okay. So what day we get Brian on?
We'll talk to him either today or tomorrow, but I think it's a great continuation of this conversation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks to the Chief Public Defender, Kiera Bradford-Gray, for joining us today. And I got to give a shout out to Maurice, who said, appreciate what he said yesterday, but, we wanted to bring the information to the table to hear it for ourselves. Look, we'll be back here tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. to bring you the latest news, happenings around Philadelphia, and, of course, our opinions and special guests. Deeply shout out to Quaisa Mathis. Thank you, Reverend Tyler. Listen, everybody, go out, change the damn world, because if you don't, nobody else will. Peace. Stay tuned for Solomon Jones.
Oh, I got eyes in the back of my head. Just think